Hello everyone. Following on from Ronnie, I got involved in the animal rights movement at the beginning of the 1980s, and it's fair to say part of that was due, very large part of that was due to the actions of Ronnie and the ALF and the Band of Mercy, who I was completely inspired by. I think it's fair to say that I came in at a time when the animal rights movement was literally on fire. It was on fire. It was a political hotbed in this country at the time. The miners' strike, there were riots, inner city riots, punk music was raging on, and we came in as young kids, fresh-faced, angry and ready to go, and we were determined nothing was going to get in our way. And that kind of set the seal for what was to follow, for me personally and for people who gathered around me. And I think one of the things that I would stress about what happened then was the local group network in this country was so strong. And it wasn't that the capital cities like London dominated, they didn't. There were powerhouses of animal rights activism in Northampton, my own town, Coventry. They did a whole panorama programme about Coventry, you know, John and everyone in Coventry. There was animal rights groups bursting out of every town, market town and even village in this country like you wouldn't believe. And they were determined not only to take this forward, but to outdo each other. And I'll give you an example of how unbelievable it got. During that period, I remember there were probably, at some point, there were 5 or 6 ALF actions a night, every night of the week. And I'll give you one example, and I'll spare some of the detail to protect the guilty. But I remember being on a job at an establishment, which I won't name, and whilst we were doing what we were doing, another group from my hometown of Northampton drove by with a carload of beagles that they'd liberated from somewhere else. Neither of us knew about what had gone on. It just happened. That's how hectic, that's how unbelievable and how powerful and how energetic it was during that period. There was a further development, I think, during the 80s that, again, was so inspiring. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And it's called the Animal Liberation Leagues. And it started off with a group called the Northern Animal Liberation League, based up here in Manchester. And their history was incredible. And we also had groups in the South East called the South East Animal Liberation League. And we had the Central Animal Liberation League. And we had the Eastern Animal Liberation League. And these organisations essentially took the ALF tactics a step further, if you like, and they organised mass daylight raids against largely establishments involved in animal research, but also others. And I think one of the most inspiring things I remember about that period, and I think it probably feeds into everything that happened since, including Shack and all the other things, but what they did was they grabbed the media attention in a way that you just wouldn't believe. And I'll pick a couple of examples out here because it's worth mentioning them from a historical perspective. We're talking about the mid-80s here. And there was a raid by the Central Animal Liberation League. And this was on a Sunday afternoon, middle of the Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock, bright summer's day. And this group of people went into Park Farm. Now, this was the holding station for Oxford University. So all the animals were held there that would go into the laboratories at Oxford. Beagles, monkeys, rabbits, rats, but also dogs that had been obviously lifted off the street, Old English sheepdogs, collies that were found in there. And this group, the Central Animal Liberation League, in the middle of a Sunday afternoon, went into Park Farm, loaded up with cameras, and this was a new departure for the animal rights movement, filming what they did. Went in, liberated the dogs, broke into the monkey unit and filmed it. But this is what I love about the animal rights movement, and the thing that we should cherish is the sheer audacity and intelligence working together. They not only liberated those animals, they took University Park Farm's own van, they stole their own van to drive their own animals away in. Just imagine that. The second thing I want to mention, another one that had a massive impact on me, and again, it goes to the intelligence and audacity that comes together uniquely in the mind of an animal rights activist at the time, was a raid on the Royal College of Surgeons in 1984. And the Royal College of Surgeons was based at the historic home of Charles Darwin. And this site was used for carrying out experiments on animals by the RCS at the time, including experiments on dogs, monkeys, a whole selection of animals. And again, on a Sunday afternoon, middle of daylight, 100 people stormed into the Royal College of Surgeons, cameras in hand, broke in, filmed the dogs in there, the beagles, but also, again, an Old English sheepdog that put its paw up to a command, greyhounds, ex-racing greyhounds. But fundamentally, during the raid, a lot of documents were grabbed, and in that were some photographs of a monkey called Moan. And I will never forget, and this shows you the power of our movement, the grassroots animal rights movement. That night, on the Sunday evening, ITV News at 10, the first news item that flashed up on their screen, millions of people were sat in their homes that night, and what they saw flash up on their screens that night, lead news story, was a picture of this monkey, Moan, right there on the TV screens, millions of times. No one had ever seen inside a lab, let alone the Royal College of Surgeons, this so-called august body of medical researchers. But this poor monkey that later became the subject of the first ever prosecution, I think, as far as I'm aware, of a laboratory in the UK. They were found guilty of ill-treating this monkey. They did win on appeal, unfortunately. But imagine that. An animal rights movement. These were grassroots animal rights activists. These were just ordinary people, just like you, just like all of us, ordinary people, did that. Headline on the news. And I'll tell you what, a movement like that is undefeatable. Now, I'm not going to say if I was there or not, who knows? Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. All I can say is that in terms of motivation, in terms of inspiration, that's what the 80s was like. It was non-stop.